Now we're going to be looking at the idea about what happens with worthless discussion, meaning this is a discussion that is devoid of any Torah content. So what happens here is that so we're saying that when I'm involved in something that's klipas noga, it is mutter, it is permissible, but yet I'm not bringing God consciousness into it, that energy is going to be downgraded into the three impure klipas, and that is going to desensitize me from godliness, and it's going to leave its effect on my soul. And therefore the spiritual remedy is the soul experiencing kafakala, which is the hollow of a sling. Okay, versus forbidden discussions, right? Mockery, lashon hara, evil gossip, and slander, all these things, when a person, it actually is one of the 365 prohibitions, and therefore a person is actively engaging in the three impure klipas and sitra achara, the side of otherness, and therefore it needs a more serious cleansing. Cannot just be the kafakela, as we mentioned in the previous slide. It actually needs to be the experience of Gehenna. And so we need to think of Gehenna as a cleansing process, okay? Hashem loves us. Hashem wants a relationship with us. This is not punishment for the sake of punishment. This is punishment for the sake of teaching and drawing close. And like the way a parent doesn't punish their kid, their parent does whatever the kid needs to be in their ultimate state. Okay? And so this isn't just Hashem wants to be cruel. This is Hashem loves us. And if we put ourselves in a spiritually defiled situation, Hashem is going to give us the opportunity to be resensitized to godliness. So a person usually transgresses a prohibition out of warmth, right? Desire, lust, right? It's like just that craving, that overcoming fire. If I need this thing and I need it now, right? That's usually how sin happens. Whereas neglecting a positive commandment is a symptom of coolness and indifference. So therefore, in the afterlife, or in the next world, prohibitions are cleansed by a hot fire of Gehenna, right? Because the sin came in with passion, so it's going to come out through heat. And neglected commandments are healed by the cooling of Gehenna, by the idea of snow. And so this is just like the idea of koshering something, right? If something becomes unkosher through heat, it's going to become kosher through heating that vessel. And so the idea is that it isn't just punishment for the sake of punishment. It's not the idea of like sitting in jail, God forbid. It's punishment. It's really just a spiritual consequence of needing to be cleansed off in order to be able to be resensitized to experience all the beauty that we can experience in the next world. Okay, that being said, in Chabad thought, we do not focus on kibuch, purgatory of the grave, or the hollow slingshot, or Gehenna very much. We say, just worry about not being Gehenna in this world. Meaning it's very easy for a person to live hell on earth, right? Or even like we look at the slingshot, right? What's a slingshot in this world is, am I good or am I bad? Am I good or am I bad? Am I good or am I bad? Should I do this decision, that decision, this decision, that decision? Like we can drive ourselves insane in this world. I could be in Gehenna in this world. As we're going to see, we go to Kuntres Akron, we're going to learn the whole Tanya together. We're going to get to the last book. Heaven and hell are consciousness, right? It's different levels of consciousness. So I could be in Gehenna, I could be in hell in this world through not feeling worthy, through not connecting to Hashem, through living in a place of self-doubt and regret. And so more than we need to worry about Gehenna in the next world, it's good to know about it. It's part of Torah. It's very important that we know about it. But more so, worry about not being in hell in this world than worrying about not being in hell in the next world, right? Focus on living heaven in this world, bringing heaven to the world, living in a consciousness of positivity in this world. So now we're going to switch gears a moment, okay? And we're going to look at the spiritual reality of studying secular wisdom. What happens when we fill our minds with secular wisdom? So the impure faculties of the animal soul contaminates its corresponding faculty of the divine soul. So like we've established, there's chesed, there's kindness in the godly soul, and there's kindness in the animal soul. And they correspond to each other. So if I contaminate something in my animal soul, it's going to have its spiritually corresponding effect on the divine soul. So therefore, secular wisdom is more contaminating for the soul than worthless discussion. And secular wisdom contaminates the godly soul's intellectual faculties. I mean, worthless discussion, it doesn't take much thought. It's not exactly such a thought-out situation. And just like petty gossip. And therefore, it's more just contaminating my emotions, which are a lower faculty. But what's going to actually contaminate my chachma bina das, my three higher faculties of intellect, is secular wisdom. So why is secular wisdom contaminating to the intellectual faculties of one's soul? Like, what's the issue? Ego 101. All right, so this is a little bit of Kabbalah for us. In a world called the world of Tohu, this is a spiritual realm, the vessels of this world shattered, okay? And the sphirot of the backs of sacred Chachma and Bina shattered, okay? So the Chachma and Bina in that world, wisdom and understanding, the backs of them shattered. That was basically everything has a spiritual influence of the shattering of the vessels of the worlds of Tohu. There's lots of liturgy, you can read at Chabad.org, about the shattering of the vessels of Tohu. But for our sake here, we just want to understand that basically Hakma Mina got messed up. All right, what happened is that because of this, wisdom is no longer just revealing godliness, it actually conceals godliness and leads to ego. Meaning, when learning secular wisdom, the natural tendency, because sacred wisdom and Bina were shattered, or the backs of them are shattered, is that now it leads to me feeling superior, right? Like I'm on an ego trip. Like, I learned that, okay, I learned it 2 seconds ago, but now I'm a genius over here, Instead of wisdom, deflating the ego and making some person humble and realizing, wow, Hashem's wisdom is so vast, it naturally leads to ego, meaning having those letters in front of my name can easily make me feel better than the person next to me. Or even just having more knowledge, experience it, it leads to haughtiness, it leads to ego. And so basically that's this issue of learning secular wisdom, is that the natural tendency is that it leads to ego. So basically the Greeks thought wisdom was the greatest human capacity and despised the idea of something transcending intellect. So the Greeks were like, Torah is genius. Torah is philosophy. Learn it all you want. We are a nation of philosophers. Go for it. When they learned about the sphere of Keter, when we learned that we actually are doing this because we want to transcend, because we're connecting to something higher than my own limited intellect, then I'm going to do a mitzvah that doesn't make sense to my own human intellect because I believe there's actually something greater than my own human intellect. They snapped, okay? They were like, and that's when they started persecuting the Jewish people for doing mitzvahs. And mitzvahs that didn't make sense to their intellect, they immediately banned. Like, for example, bris milah. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you mutilating the human body? Hashem, like, what are you doing there? Like, that doesn't make sense to me, and therefore I can't handle it. Versus the Jewish belief is, yeah, the bris is on the 8th day because 8th represents transcendent, right? 7 days of the week, 8 is beyond just the natural order of the world. I believe that there's something higher and more powerful than my own intellect, and it's called divine wisdom. And yes, I'd much rather be aligned with divine wisdom than my own limited human wisdom. Now, of course, Torah is something very intellectual, but if it was just to be intellectual, it would be inherently limited, as wisdom is always going to be limited. Does that mean I should never study secular wisdom again, right? I'm on the 3rd floor here. Should I just chuck out all my secular books here? What exactly does that mean for my practical life, okay? So everything klipas noga. We're not saying it's a sur. We're not saying that it's a 3 impure klipas, unless you are learning, secular wisdom with 3 impure klipas, in which case it's not secular wisdom. It's just really 3 impure klipas kind of knowledge, learning about different types of okay, let's leave that for a different discussion, okay? But basically, klipas noga wisdom, meaning the ideas are not specifically against Torah, they're just secular ideas. So we need to be conscious when interacting with them, just like anything with klipas noga. It's a downward escalator. Unless I'm actually actively adding God consciousness, that energy is going to be degraded. So when we study secular wisdom, we have to have 2 things in our toolkit, okay? One is that I'm doing this to make a living. I'm doing this to support my family. I'm doing this with intention, and that I'm coming here to do the mitzvah of parnas, of supporting myself and my family. Or I'm doing this in the service of God and Torah. For example, by studying astrology right now, I'm going to be able to clarify a point in Torah. Or by studying mathematics, I'm going to be able to clarify something a point in Torah. Or by studying quantum physics, I'm going to be able to really express a point in Chassidus, right? So it's going in with a very strong Torah-based intention. So these 2 positive intentions, to be bittul to God's will, right, to really just be surrendered over to God's will actually protect my intellectual faculties from being contaminated with an inflated ego. Meaning when I go into learning secular wisdom, so for the sake of, if I'm doing this because I want to glorify Hashem's Torah, right, I want to really clarify a point in Torah and make Hashem's Torah great. Or I'm doing this lishma because Hashem wants me to be able to support my family, and therefore I'm going in with that mindset. That mindset of bittul, of surrender, is going to counteract the negative tendency of wisdom to lead to an inflated ego. So if you're looking for a role model in learning secular subjects for God, right, really going in with that God-based intention, look no further, my friends. This was the reasoning of Maimonides and Nachmanides, the Rambam and the Ramban, a blessed memory, and their colleagues who immersed themselves in secular studies. This is why they were going in, either to make a living or glorify Hashem's Torah and clarify points in Hashem's Torah through the secular studies. And if we fact check for a second, both Maimonides and Nachmanides were both doctors. So, moral of the story is, knowledge can make a person feel superior to others, right? Look at me and my PhD. I got my 3 fancy letters and I'm better than you. Or allow a person to stand in humble, childlike wonder the vastness of God's wisdom, right? A person can learn quantum physics, and either it could be God is awesome! Everything is one! Oh my goodness! Wow! It makes us appreciate the truth of Torah. It makes us really appreciate what Torah says, like, we really are all one. Because we learn quantum physics, you're like, we really are all one. Or it can make it be like, well, I know quantum physics. Do you? You know, like, it can either be the most ego-inflating thing or it can be the most humble thing. And the difference that Tanya is telling us is the kavanah. I need to go in with a God-conscious intention. Because if it's klipas nova, if I'm not actively elevating it, it's going to bring me down. Thank you for taking the time to learn today's Tanya together.